Good morning. Today is November 6, 2018. It's election day across America. My name is Bob Wolk. I'm the Reference and Special Collections Librarian at the Chang Library of William Patterson University. And I'm here today with Dr. Stephen Hahn, Professor of English. Joining us today are Jack Silverman and Elaine Peicher. They are the children of Herschel Silverman, whose collection of beat poetry the Chang Library accepted into the collection and for its archives about a year and a half ago. So I'd like to just start off by asking you a question, that kind of obvious question. How did your father become attracted to beat poetry?
You want to take that one?
Well, I think he started out in high school with poetry,
Right.
because it was poetry was an outlet for him to express himself. You know, he had a hard childhood, and it was a way for him to express his feelings. And I think he read a lot, and he started getting interested in, you know, the different poets. And he was of the right age of Allen Ginsberg and all of these poets who were establishing themselves as well. You know, he was the same age. So I think, you know, he connected in that way. And as I said, he read a lot, and poetry was really important to him as an outlet, for sure. And I think that basically how he got into it and started communicating by writing letters to the various poets. That's how he communicated always, with writing letters. Mm-hmm. So he introduced himself that way and became part of this scene, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And
he also wrote some short stories when he was in high school.
Yeah.
And he did have an English teacher that really helped him along, that gave him a lot of influence. I did find, I think I have a copy somewhere at home of a letter that she gave him that encouraged him greatly. So I think there was that also, and I think it was the reading. It was always reading. Reading was huge with him, and reading with us. I mean,
Oh, that was very big.
You know,
I went to the library with him. Whenever he had time off and could take, a few hours.
Right.
Also bookstores.
Yes.
I would visit bookstores with him all the time. So books were, you'd find them all over. He was.
My interaction with him was a little bit different because there was a lot of sports.
Oh, right.
Some boys sports, and with the high school and the store and interacting with the players, and so it was that aspect for me. And we would talk sports a lot, and politics, sports and politics.
Oh, politics were very
Politics
big.
were huge.
Today would be a big day.
Today would be a huge day.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, those are the areas that and the Times, reading the New York Times from cover to cover.
Yeah.
So he really balanced two different worlds in terms of the poetry world, communicating with people pretty widely among the poets of his generation. But he also had this life as a full-time business person running the store, citizen of the community. How did he find the time to write? And he was obviously very engaged with you both.
I can remember when I was little, I'd come home for lunch from grammar school, and he'd be there, and I'd have lunch with him, and you could hear the clacking of the typewriter. I mean, and it was a manual. It was I forget what the brand was, but you could hear him clacking away on the typewriter. And at night, he would just come home and he would write. He'd had that little cubby, and that our mom actually built for him.
Yes, she did. Nights were
huge for and weekends is when he would go to New York and go to the readings. I mean, I remember
Friday nights a lot of times. Yeah.
I remember Saturday afternoon going to Dr. Generosity's, which was a place on the Upper East Side. And being there with the sawdust on the floor. And Marguerite Harris, she was the one who ran the readings there.
Right. I also, the first time I actually met Allen Ginsberg, he took me when I was 16, and he took me to, not far from where I live right now, it was called the Cafe Metro. and a lot of these people were meeting there, and it was my first time to meet him, and it was exciting. I was, high school in the middle 60s, so that was certainly the times, and so yeah, he incorporated, actually a pretty conventional life, because he had a wife, 2 children, a house, and working in a store, and then he had this other side. It was totally different, But yeah.
So the story is that his initial contact with Ginsberg, seems to be what it is in the biographies, was that he read that Gregory Corso was starving in Paris, and he sent some money to Ginsberg.
Right, he sent some money.
Yes.
Right.
And then things eventually
Led one thing
One
to
thing led to
another.
another,
Right.
Right.
The letters were certainly, as I said,
Yeah.
Right.
So there's this group of letters. So far, I've only seen the Xerox copies of them. Are the originals? Did they go to the Ginsberg archives, or
The original
are they
Ginsberg,
still
I
with the
believe-
archive
I
here?
think they're at the University of Buffalo.
Buffalo. Yeah. Okay.
The Ginsberg letters or the Enslin
The
letters?
Enslin, the
Enslin letters went
Okay.
to Buffalo,
Right.
and I know we sold the Ginsberg letters, but
Right.
I spoke to the guy who actually brokered the deal for him.
Was he Fred NYU? No.
No, it
Bill
was,
Morgan.
No,
No, wasn't
no, it was another guy. I
Uh-huh.
can't remember his name right now.
Right.
But he had brokered the deal for him for those
Uh-huh.
certainly some letters, and the Ginsberg letters might have wound up in the Ginsberg archives.
Right. So that would be, I think it's Stanford. Is what
Yeah.
So that's another interesting aspect of the breadth of your father's interest in poetry. Ted Enslin being a very different
Yeah.
kind of poet.
Much different, yes.
They were very
Very,
close.
very close friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember he came to visit when I was really little.
Every week a letter came.
Yeah.
Exchanged,
Right.
Every
week.
Several hundred letters.
I mean,
Yeah.
for like 40 years.
Yeah.
Really long time.
But Enslin lived out in Washington County, Maine.
Right.
Pretty
Remotely.
solitary.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
solitary.
right.
And one of the things he did was to manufacture by hand books. There's some correspondence about
Our dad doing it. You mean?
No.
Or Ted.
Ted.
Ted, right,
Yeah.
right.
It's possible.
Yeah.
That I don't know about. But I know our dad used to do the
But he
he
different.
would do the
but
chapbooks. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
But
All right.
yeah, Ted.
Yeah.
Ted had a breadth of work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Huge.
So as the relationship with Ginsberg went on, there's one thing that your father did. He's your
the high
father's high on the beats.
And
And
this one. Yeah. BB
this is the
Baby
poem
was-
where
right.
Ginsberg.
Right.
This poem went through several iterations. TV baby poems.
Right.
Television was a baby crawling toward that death chamber is the poem.
Right.
1968. Pretty powerful poem. But this is part of your father's writing of the history of the beats from his perspective, and
Right.
Ginsberg writes
Right.
an introduction. A lot of times when literary history gets written, there's little snippets that come out. And one of the things about this archive is that it amplifies other dimensions. So the line in this poem is frequently referred to in relation to Herschel. And then there's talk around what does it mean and so on. But there's more in the archive that a more extended conversation between Ginsberg and your father. But it took Ginsberg 20 years to get to Bayonne. Is that
Yeah.
is that
Actually,
That was-
is that a big trip?
That was a big.
that was a huge thing.
That
for
was a
him.
big deal.
It was a really big deal. Actually, I had I was there. I mean, that wasn't the first time I had met Mr. Ginsberg, but that time it was in, I think, 78. or so.
Yeah.
And I was in college, and I worked for a liquor store doing deliveries. And I see the lights on the store at like 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. So to me, something was wrong.
Yeah.
So I stopped the car, and I get on, and there's my dad and Allen Ginsberg, and I think Tommy Wonka was there.
Yeah, I think
And his son. And Allen was there, and we were talking and whatever, and they had this, he had a poem in Rolling Stone that particular month, and he signed it and described it to him, and so since I was there, that was one of the things he left for me.
Right.
So they had been to Patterson that day?
Yes.
Oh, right.
They came here for the, there was a
festival or something, yeah.
Right.
Must have been,
The William Carlos Williams Festival.
Right, William Carlos Williams.
And I think this is, I'm not sure.
Right.
This is Ann Waldman.
Ann Waldman, right.
Yeah.
Allen Ginsberg. I'm not sure if that's the same day.
I think it is that day.
Right.
Probably. It doesn't have a date on it.
It doesn't have a date.
That's one of the things, he didn't date a lot of stuff.
He
He wasn't good with dating things.
Yeah.
So, have you been back to the Falls recently?
I haven't been there in a long time.
Probably, I'd say I was there about 4 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
So, but were you there with...
At the Falls?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't.
No, I was working that day.
Yeah, I wasn't
Right,
either.
okay.
I wasn't with him.
There's also photograph of your father and Danny Schott at the Falls. You know
Okay.
Danny
But it
Schott?
wouldn't have been then.
Wouldn't have been then.
No,
He
that-
didn't
Yeah,
know-
right.
he
It
didn't
was
know
late.
Danny
Yeah,
then.
it was later.
1980s, 1990s.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So,
the
yeah.
time frame.
Yeah, I would say probably the early to mid 90s, I would guess.
Right.
Because he
Yeah.
didn't meet Danny till after 1988.
Right.
Right. So Danny Schott was the editor of
Right.
this magazine, Long
Right.
Shot
Long Shot.
magazine, which Allen Ginsberg had a part in founding this. They did an event and charged people to come to it. Ginsberg took half of the money and gave the other half to Danny Schott to start the magazine. But your father was publishing in this magazine.
Yeah, and he also
Yes.
did some editing also.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was another. There was a long shot, which they. I don't. When was that one?
So this one is
That must.
97. This one is
Okay.
94. And your
So those are
father,
earlier ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
He had. There was that other.
Your father had.
Jews issue.
Yeah, the Jews issue,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not the
But she wasn't crazy about the cover.
Yeah.
right. So I don't know if there's a complete set of these in the archive.
That I don't know.
Were there evergreens in there? Did you? The evergreen.
Yeah, there's-
They're
I think they were in
yeah,
there.
they were
I think they were in there.
because those were obviously earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one, Danny Schott says, I don't have a lot to say in terms of his editor's notes. And he writes a page, and then he says, I'm going to let a good friend, Herschel Silverman, finish up these notes. The following lines are quoted from a letter he wrote me about a few months ago. So again, it's your father writing a history of the beat movement from his perspective.
Right.
Yeah, he did a lot of. I used to say he was like a voyeur, because he kind of viewed the scene and he would write about the scene, and he'd always his poems would be dedicated to people for particular events that took place, and so he was in it, but he also had the ability to stand back and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of different from a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And he would take what was happening at the time.
Right.
That
he was
was-
very in the moment.
Yeah, he was.
Right.
He would, he. I always think of the .com poem.
Yeah.
It wasn't never on the computer.
Never. I mean, we tried to get him to take a computer.
Right.
But he wrote his poem about
Right.
what was going on at the pier at the time.
Right.
So it was a lot of period pieces actually. Vietnam, he had certainly. And,
Yeah.
So he political statements obviously in his poetry as well.
Now, if we look just for a moment at his interior life, did he need to justify or rationalize his Orthodox Jewishness with associations with the beats or their lifestyles or subjects?
Well, I'll just say this before he wasn't, I would not call him orthodox in his, he wasn't, you're talking about his orthodox
practice?
ways or practice of his religion.
Practice of his religion.
So he wasn't
He wasn't,
orthodox.
no.
He had one thing that he always did,
Always.
but, other than that,
Keeping kosher was huge.
that was his
That was
thing.
his thing.
But he wasn't someone who was going to a service all the time or, just certain period, of course, certain times of the
Holidays.
year. He went, the
Right.
high holidays.
High holidays and
So he,
right.
but he did, there was something about his inner feeling about his Judaism and the difference with the poets, and many of them were some, obviously people Jewish, not Jewish, or some were partly, or so it gave different flavors for him. The one thing that I do remember him talking about, this was later, is that when he went to the Allen Ginsberg Memorial, and it was a lot of people, and Allen wasn't a practicing Jew. He was, I think, a Buddhist, right? At the end of it, everybody stood up and they said the Kaddish. And so a lot of people had that within them, in their upbringing,
Right.
or followed along with someone else. But, so the Judaism for him, I think, was, he kept that was his part. That was him, and he didn't. I don't think he didn't. Everybody knew he kept kosher, so they were, very open,
Accommodating.
helpful, or if there was an event or something. But I don't know that it played into.
So he didn't necessarily lead a prescribed lifestyle.
It's interesting. He did and he didn't. Like I have at home, I have his sitter that he did pray from, but he wouldn't put tefillin on. But he would get up in the morning and pray. And it's marked with the different prayers that, it's got paper clips that mark, the pages that he would do. But he was, I think mostly he struggled with God, to be honest. I mean, because he had so much,
The start to his life.
Start to his life was tough for him. And I guess also when there's a poem in there about they dragged him to shul at 7 years old,
Yeah, right.
to say Kaddish for his mother. And I'm sure that had to have done something to his psyche.
Right. That's where the poetry certainly fits in for him, for his inner feelings,
And I think it was really he lived probably an Orthodox lifestyle when he was a kid because he lived with his grandmother.
Right.
Who was an Orthodox woman.
So the story there is that he was born in California.
No, he was born in Port Chester, New York.
Oh, he was born in Georgia, but then they moved to California?
Well, they first went to New Mexico. His father had MS. So they thought the weather would be better. So here's this, Jewish kosher family. They went to New Mexico, which I can't imagine what it was like back in, late
the late 20s or 30s.
Almost 30.
Yeah.
And from there, they went to San Diego because it was better for them.
Right.
And so that's, unfortunately, the downfall then, because his mom died when he was 7.
Right.
And that's the night train. That's the whole story.
Right.
If you look at that, how he came across and didn't know his mother was in the other car.
Right. Okay.
And we had a great aunt who told this story, and it's very sad that he came off the train with someone who was like a guardian to take him across, someone they knew. And behind they were pushing the and it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So the story is that he came alone. Nobody went out to get him?
No, he came with, you're right, he
But
came with someone they either, I'm not sure, hired
or whatever.
Yeah. So
That we didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And
he lived with his grandmother and his aunt.
right.
Yeah.
And
they lived in
Jersey City.
Jersey City. And he grew up with a lot of family, though. He had a big family there.
Right. A lot of cousins.
Yeah. So he wasn't alone in that respect, but he was alone without parents.
So as an adult, did he still have those family connections, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
And certainly the aunt that was...
She was really the connector for the family.
And she was the one, she was the single last one left, didn't get married, and so she was the one who was there, but, it was not easy for her. That's not what she signed up for, of course, but she was a loving woman. A little hard to start off with a 7 or 8-year-old boy who was now really
Sure,
a
rambunctious.
little angry and rambunctious.
Yeah.
But he kept up with cousins. He had a lot of first cousins, so they lived for,
Actually, there's in the box of letters, I think, it was all letters to our mom in the service. There's one letter in there from his cousin Norby, who he was pretty close to, because they both shared a love of jazz.
Right.
Yeah, there's a very touching note from Allen Ginsberg to your father when your mother passed, and I think one thing that they seemed to have shared was a kind of compassion, and that's maybe the connection of the Buddhism, Judaism thing is that the sense of you get the sense that underneath this fairly distant relationship through letters, there's another dimension of understanding between them.
He connected also with his father.
Yes,
with
Louis
Louis
Ginsberg.
and with Louis's wife.
Right, Edith.
Right. I forgot her name for a minute. Yeah, he really connected with them, I remember. So that was a nice... And now I know that you have Louis Ginsberg's.
We do.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice to put the...
Actually, I remember...
put them together.
I don't know if I was in college or I was out of college, but I remember taking him to Louis Ginsberg's funeral. It was actually in the same place where we had Dad's funeral.
Oh.
Yeah.
In Paramus. And that was quite an interesting event,
to
say the least. It was it was in a Jewish place, but it wasn't a very Jewish ceremony.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It was kind of interesting.
So you speak about his family and his group of friends. When what was their reaction, or to your dad's association in this rather what may have been considered a somewhat alternate lifestyle at the time?
I think his cousins were supportive. I don't remember any
and
not
they
being.
came to
and
some readings.
I remember Norby and Ruth would come. I don't know about Hirsch, but I know Norby and Ruth would come.
He had one cousin who he really looked up to and had a great relationship with, this woman who she lived out in California, and he really had a warm relationship with her. And I think she also was very understanding of him and his poetry. In terms of friends, friends who were, let's say, couple friends, my parents, that wasn't part of their...
that wasn't their lifestyle. I don't remember them like going out on a Saturday night with a group of people.
Well, they had couple friends, but it was totally disassociated from...
Oh, for sure. From the poetry? For sure.
That was just not...
And a lot of things, their social life revolved off of the store.
Yeah, right.
But to the best of your knowledge, were either this small group of people that he knew, or either of you, part of his poetry, either perhaps as by name or in code or in a metaphor? Were these people... could these people be identified in his work?
Good question.
I wouldn't say the friends were.
No.
The poet friends, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I know he mentioned me a couple of times.
Relatives, yes. Grandchildren, he got in there.
Right.
But not necessarily these other friends that weren't connected to the poetry. People all knew that he did it, and they, but... Although,
there's one, I actually have a copy of it hanging in my office, that he wrote about Ron Rusnak from the store.
Right.
It was the store, but they were friendly though.
Yeah, I guess he incorporated some of his store people, because with the Vietnam War, there was someone who went to high school who was a few years older than me, and he wrote. Yes, he was the first one. Yeah.
So, say a little bit more about that, because your father there's these awards that he's getting for being recognized for supporting the school athletic teams and so on. But then the Vietnam War comes along, and that's a divisive thing for lots of people. Was that an issue, or was there more?
He wasn't so public about his politics.
No,
in
but he
that
was
way.
very supportive. I mean, I went to the high school that the store was across the street from,
Yeah.
and he was very supportive of the kids there. And I mean, I don't know how the Stanley Kopczynski. I don't remember
I certainly
I don't remember how. I didn't know him,
Right.
but he was numbers of years older than me. I don't think there was ever any conflict with, the kids were obviously, if you were a guy at that time, you were not, so I don't think if he did voice anything, I don't think there was any conflict. And, he counseled them. I think what he would do is he'd tell them to stay in school.
Right.
That was a big
Actually,
thing.
both he and Mom,
Right.
they both did.
But he was really, and he would take some of them under his wing. I mean, when I was really young, they took in somebody into our house. He lived with us for a while. He also had a very difficult life. His parents were not to be seen, and aunts and uncles were helping. So he lived with us for, I don't know how long, a year or something.
Right.
So he would really have compassion for a lot of these kids, And Vietnam, he would just stay in school. That was the mantra.
Stay in school so you can get into college.
Right.
See if you can avoid
So
this.
the Stanley Kopczynski death was early in
He was the
60s.
first one
From
that
Bayonne.
died in Bayonne and in the war.
So that would have been around 64.
Something
early
like
in
that,
the,
I guess. Yes, that's why I didn't.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
No. So,
Yeah.
So he didn't, go around publicly, spouting things. That certainly wasn't his way. He was actually, when you would see him sitting around with all of us at the table, or just in general, certain social settings, he was quiet.
Very quiet.
But when he got up to perform, it was a whole other person. And one of his cousins said that to us. He said, he's another person. He just totally comes out and can perform.
Can you elaborate on that? Can you discuss what it was like at a poetry reading that he went to?
Well, I mean, certainly you'll see, I guess, in that city, right?
Right.
But at poetry readings, he would put a lot in, and he would, he liked having someone backing him with music, and they would play off of each other.
Right.
He did things at La Mama where he dressed up and did, things like that. So he had this energy. He absolutely had a really good energy. But if you were sitting here talking to me, he would answer you for sure, but he didn't. Wasn't that kind of Although I'll say this, my husband's sitting here. When he would come to our house and the two of them would have political discussions, they were on the same page with their politics, and they would talk and talk and talk, and my kids would say, "Whose father is he? Is he yours?" Or so he could get, he could get into things, but socially he was, quieter.
He, when I would see him perform, I remember one time he did a thing down in New Brunswick at the Court Tavern, and it was very late, and he's going on. I'm like, Dad, I gotta go. I gotta work tomorrow.
Right.
But he really was this whole other person, and one thing I can say, I don't know, but you can say it, but I was never embarrassed by it. It was a little bit weird. I mean, you grow up with this. I mean, how many of your friends, your parents are like that?
Right.
I was never weirded out by it. It's just because that's who he was.
Yeah.
But to me, it was all about the store. I mean, because while you'd worked in the store also, we both worked in the store.
Yeah.
But it I guess because it was sports oriented and all that, and that's kind of what I was into. So it really more kind of took over. Though I took up guitar late in life, and I actually played with him once, and I began in a major kind of way at the Knitting Factory with it was his 70th birthday for David Amram. So it was the one time I really like practiced, to do something with him, and it was great. And it was a one-time deal, and it was perfect for that. And somewhere there's probably some video or audio of it somewhere floating around. I'd love to have it. But that was really my only real connection, me and him connecting on it.
He was cool, actually, if you think about it, saying the word cool.
Yes.
Because we have a friend who said, it's really something when your friend's parent is cooler than the rest of us.
Right.
And he would have readings in his house that our friends would come to.
Right.
He would send out his notices. Our friends became part of his, I'm not going to say groupies, but and they would go. Sometimes we weren't even there, and they were there. They were able to get to it.
Right.
So, and he would have them in his house. We had it in our house for him. We had this whole group. A woman had come from Israel, and she was going to read, and this Ostreicher, I forget her.
Right, Alicia Ostreicher.
Right. So she came. There was a whole lot of the New Jersey poets, and we had this whole thing at our house. And
we actually did a thing with him in my synagogue with him in Perry.
Yeah, we did them also. He would, any place
you go, he would
was
go.
happy to read.
Yeah.
So this Court Tavern event, do you remember when that was?
It had to be in the
So you were
mid to late 80s.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Maybe
Had to be
90
late
or
80s.
no. I mean, maybe it was a more early 90s.
Yeah.
It was more early 90s.
Right. So the Court Tavern was a bar in New Brunswick. It's right in the center of town, down the street from the court.
Right.
But it was a late night. The bars in New Brunswick then would stay open until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And people would perform there. So it was, and it's right
by the train
down
station.
in between the campuses of Rutgers University and by the train station. Yeah. That was just the one time that you performed publicly?
The one time was at this knitting factory thing. That was the only time I did something. One time he did something with Mike, my guitar teacher, and the guy that I jammed with, we played, and then he got up to do some poetry, and we all kind of played with him. It was kind of a mishmash, but because we didn't practice anything, but it was it was just in the moment. It was a cool kind of thing. But I never really did a whole lot with him in the music, in my music and his poetry, because I don't really write much. So
He actually loved doing his poetry with Perry Robinson.
Yes,
that was someone that he really enjoyed. His time with him.
So Perry Robinson was he played clarinet. And he wrote. Was he the composer of a famous popular?
No, that was his father,
Earl Robinson.
Okay,
and
that was at the house I live in.
Yeah.
Oh, the house I live in.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so Frank Sinatra and then Paul Robeson.
Right. I mean, they were also connected. This Robinsons were connected to Arkins. The actor.
They were relatives.
They were relatives. His mother, Perry's mother, was an Arkin. So they were. There's a lot of a lot of socialism and
interesting.
A lot of different people.
Right.
And he did painting also. We talked about it before. He used to paint bottles.
Yeah. And other things.
And
a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah. So when did he retire?
From
in 1986.
86 from the store.
From his store.
Yeah.
And the store remained intact and was sold, or
it didn't remain intact as that store.
As that store, no.
The landlord of the building took over and had someone else.
It's been several pizza places.
Oh,
yeah, it's never been.
They always thought it could be good across from the high school, but they didn't realize that the kids didn't come out for lunch anymore.
It was never the same as when he was there. And I can't tell you how many times I've been places and they say, "Oh, you were from Bayonne?" And did you know Hirsch? I say, yeah, Hirsch is my dad, Or if you ask them, did you know him? Oh, their eyes light up. And I remember going in for this and that and, the sodas and the,
Right. There's a whole Facebook page dedicated to the store.
Yeah.
Was the store always called the Beehive?
Not in the beginning.
Not in the beginning, no.
I don't know.
It was Hirsch's Luncheonette.
Yeah, I don't know.
How did he come up with the...
The Beehive is because Bayonne High Schools...
Oh, the bees.
The bees. So it became the Beehive.
Right.
then, and
Actually, he gave the name to the high school when they got a cafeteria at the skating rink or something.
yeah, right. They started they have
Okay.
indoor skating.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and he was very, he
was thrilled
He
that I
worked
think-
very well with them as well,
Right.
with
Yeah.
the teachers, because he would, he would say nobody could. He had turned the pinball machine
Right.
off in the day, and he didn't
Right.
let anybody hang around. You come in,
No.
get what you want, and you're out. You can't
Right.
stay here
Right.
because the high school. He wanted to have good relations
Right.
with them.
Yeah.
So and he did. He knew so many of
Oh,
the
boy.
teachers and the kids. And,
So he was relatively young when he retired.
yeah, well,
62.
he retired. He was really pushed out because
Someone
they wanted,
bought the building.
Someone else bought the building.
Jacked
and
up the rent. And,
Right,
Yeah.
and-
Okay.
And unfortunately, actually, because my mom got sick maybe 6 months later.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
he was able to be
He was
her
the caretaker.
person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's what happened. He didn't have retirement. They
Right.
didn't have any retirement together.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
That was the sad part.
Yeah. There's a photograph that's kind of unexplained. I'm not sure I can find it at the moment, but there's a photograph of Hirsch in, I think it's Lincoln, Massachusetts. That's on one of the reminiscences that's on a website.
I think it was a Cherry Valley Festival or something.
No,
Well,
that's
this is-
New York. I
yeah,
think,
Cherry
Valley.
Yeah, does that
Imagine.
seem?
Wait, didn't he go up to visit cousin David? Maybe they took a trip or something.
No,
Hmm.
it doesn't sound.
So that would be
No.
Lincoln, Concord,
Yeah,
that area.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was when the time. Oh, maybe he had a reading or something up there.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
With
Could be. Sure.
He went up with Perry someplace, but I'm not sure.
Right.
That was,
But he also had a reading up there, and somehow he connected with his cousin David.
yeah, but not there.
Not there.
Not in,
Not there.
not that area.
Right.
But I don't know.
So, I mean, did he ever travel any?
Travel yeah. He
Yes and no.
the first time, and I'll say this, in our growing up, and we're 9 years apart.
Mhm.
So, and I always
Yeah.
say I'm the younger one, but that as it may. So, he had this store. It was 7 days a week,
Mhm.
and with newspapers, and you were just a slave to this kind of thing.
Right.
So finally, in 1969,
Mhm.
we're going on a family vacation.
Mhm.
Now I'm at the time 20. I'm going away with my parents,
Mhm.
right?
And in Mama.
And our great aunt, who was the one he went to live with,
Uh-huh.
and my brother and my mother. We're going to Montreal.
Uh-huh.
And we're on the bus to Montreal.
Uh-huh.
And on the way back from Montreal, Woodstock's happening. We're
major
saying,
traffic.
what's going on? Crazy traffic.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And so that
We always say we were in
we
Woodstock.
always say we were there. We actually took
Yeah.
a family vacation up around there this summer. But
Yeah.
Actually, I did get to stay in Woodstock with them.
see, so there
That's
you
right.
go.
I think I was like 16, and we took this vacation for. He had a reading
Yeah.
that I think Marguerite Harris arranged,
Oh.
and
They had people all over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marshall Brooks.
Marshall
was another
Brooks.
one.
He was in Massachusetts. He was
You'll
a
probably
Boston guy.
find some things
Yeah.
in there for
Um,
Marshall Brooks.
So we went to spend time in Woodstock.
Mhm.
So that
To
was
me,
our
the exciting
first,
the exciting part for me was that this Marguerite's husband Moses
right.
had a Jeep. And it was like didn't have the cover on, and to me this was the greatest
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, but he had a lot of interesting friends.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean-
we've certainly met.
I mean,
lot of
I remember the
different
first time
people.
I met Allen Ginsberg. He took me to the bitter end. I think I was 15 or 16, and it got really exciting because Gregory Corso came with Pollard, the guy who was in Bonnie and Clyde,
Mhm.
and they were
yeah.
Michael G. Pollard,
Michael G.
Yeah.
and they were completely wasted
Yeah.
and making a lot of noise. And what so impressed our dad was that Alan was able to just handle them quietly and not get excited in the middle of his reading.
Mhm.
And it just, it was just it was one of those events that I'll always remember.
Yeah.
I can picture it in my mind.
Actually, we've gone to some. I went to St. Mark's with him
Oh yeah.
for the streaking,
Mhm.
and that was
Yeah.
here. I was with my dad, and there comes streaking in. It's okay.
Well,
Yeah.
So I guess it's
yeah. I remember going to the first Eve thing with him.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in high school, and it's all night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're like
That's
4.
New Year's Day night.
Yeah,
They would
the
have it,
first-
and then we'd
oh,
go, you're right.
first
right?
night, I
Yeah,
guess.
the first night. Yeah.
So we get home at like 4 or 5 in the morning. My mom was berserk.
Oh, she was. She
had-
called me in the
she
middle of the
wouldn't-
night.
I don't know if she would worry if it was him alone, but because he had me,
Yeah, right.
you know, the boy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember she was.
You
really
were looking for us in the street. You saw us coming down the
She
street.
called me up. She said they're not home. I wasn't living there anymore,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and she was. Oh, she was.
Yeah, that was
beside
an
herself.
that was an adventure.
Yeah.
I know I was the only kid in my class that did get stoned with his father in the living room.
Yeah.
That was quite interesting.
Don't give Dad the keys to the car.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he didn't drive, so it didn't matter.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So, did you meet in the process of developing the book, The Candy Store Man, Jonathan London?
That's our cousin.
Oh, he's your cousin.
He's our cousin,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
He's actually.
Yeah.
He's
Like a second cousin.
his dad and my father are
We're
first
first
cousins.
cousins.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And
And his grandmother and our aunt were
yeah,
sisters.
sisters.
And
So
our,
they're very
very, very
yeah.
close. And they were really tight.
Yeah, he
Really
really,
close.
because he would write. He wrote. You'll find, I'm sure, a lot of letters. Of,
Yeah.
of
You know, there's a whole box of
Hundreds.
letters
yeah,
from John.
hundreds
Yeah.
of
Hundreds.
letters, right?
Right.
And that he, wrote this,
Right.
certainly
Mhm.
for him, and
Yeah.
they had a wonderful,
Mhm.
really wonderful relationship.
So this is all from personal observation and
Yeah.
Yeah, and some
Yeah.
things I'm sure my father told him,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. And some poetic license.
yeah, right, and some things that he
Yeah.
just threw in there,
Right,
on
because
his
it made good
right.
poetry.
But he has
Right.
he's got
a lot of
A lot
of
of books.
books.
Well, the whole.
he has a whole series
Series
on
of the
Froggy
Froggy.
books for young children,
yeah.
and yeah.
And so he was also from Bayonne or Jersey
Well,
City?
it's interesting is that his father was a career naval man,
Mhm.
so they were stationed in different places. But at one point, they were back to New Jersey,
He was stationed in Bayonne.
and he was stationed in Bayonne, and this John London is 2 years older than I am, and he went to a different elementary school, and he kept telling his parents he wanted to go to the one I went to, because that was the only person he knew.
Yeah.
And he just had told me that not too long ago. So they were there for a while, but John wasn't writing when he was that.
That was a later in life.
Yeah, it was sort of later
Right.
that he came
He
about.
was- his
Like
letters are-
40 or so.
Do you read his letters? I mean, they're beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean,
he gives you a description of he's
unbelievable.
of so much, but
Yeah.
he was later in his life that he
Right,
started
yeah.
writing,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
he's done.
It was always.
a lot of books.
It was actually always a big event when he would like come to town because he'd always been somewhere like like he traveled around
He's a
the
big
world.
traveler. Yeah,
They
he
traveled
was,
around the
yeah.
world and just showed up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But he was always really. He always would make sure to keep contact with Aunt Norma. And of course, Aunt Norma lived with his grandmother, his aunt,
They lived
who was
together,
our
right.
aunt. So so there was always that connection, that family thing going on.
Yeah.
These were always good times that you're describing, but was there anything that he expressed to you in terms of regrets, things that maybe he could have done, either with his life at the candy store or perhaps in his poetry?
I don't know about the poetry. I only had one event with him that he regretted. This is when I worked in the store. I used to have to get up with him on Sunday morning and be at the store at 6. For a 15-year-old, that's like,
That's a lot.
yeah, and I played basketball in high school, so I'll get up after a game Saturday night. And one Sunday I didn't get up, so he fired me. and he always regretted it. I said, Dad, you taught me a lesson. It's okay. And I always told him that.
Yeah.
I never was not the kind of thing that I ever harbored a bad feeling about.
Yeah.
But he did, because I think he regretted any negative interaction.
Mm.
Yeah, he certainly was not negative in in that part of dealings. Or
I mean, he wasn't Mom was a disciplinarian, not him. I mean, I don't know about you, but with me, he wasn't.
Touch.
Yeah.
I would go to him when
Yes,
Mother would
that's
say one thing, and I'd go to him and say, "Oh, I don't really want to do
Yeah.
that."
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think one of the things he never said he regretted having the store, but I think the life, it was a hard life.
It was a hard life.
And so I think that was something that he he would complain about,
Right.
you know, having to do some of the things and get there very early, you know, to you
Yeah.
know, with these newspapers. And,
Right. Yeah.
Just getting things
and
going.
they used to be a lot thicker than they are
Yeah.
today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I regret it for him because he was such a smart guy, and I always thought he would have been such a wonderful teacher.
Mm.
But he wasn't the kind of person that could be cooped up in a space.
He always said he wanted to be
He
his
didn't
own
want-
boss.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But then everybody's your boss.
Everybody's your boss when you
into
come to your
the store.
business. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
But
But
so he still was in control.
But the poetry then may have been a form of release for him.
Yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
definitely.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And it got, you know, much, I mean, from his early writings to the later, I mean, there was a real development. You know, he definitely got better. I mean, you know, I guess after he took that class.
Right. He took a class at St. Mark's, and
Mm-hmm.
well, that was really the start of his retirement in a sense. Is after my mother
Right.
died, and he went to this class that it was encouraged by Joel Lewis and Bernadette. Last name. She's got some letters in there also. I can't think of her last name now, but she was teaching the class, and that really opened up for him. And he had, aside from he missed my mother a lot, but aside putting that on the side, having the poetry was so wonderful for him. He could sit and write and quiet in his house, but he would also go to Hoboken or to the city, and he had so much going on for him, and young poets, and you know, he mixed with a lot of younger people. It kept him really active, and his mind was sharp, and it was really good.
Was there ever a subject or a topic that he didn't want to discuss, or he didn't write about?
You mean in the poetry?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
He certainly never said anything to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. I think he just, you know, would write on whatever it is he wanted to write on.
Yeah.
So that's a long, that's 30 years from the time
Right.
that the store closes
Right.
until he dies, and he
Right.
seems to have been active through.
He was pretty active.
He was active.
Almost up to, I'd say, until 85.
Yeah.
And after that,
it slowed
it
down.
was much harder for him.
Yeah.
85 years old.
Yeah,
He
once
had
he was
he had
85,
physical
physically,
issues.
it was hard for him to
Right.
get around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then it, you know, wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these people would come and visit him or call, and he'd be on the phone
Right.
sometimes.
Right.
For, you know, long
Right.
periods. People were nice. They would pick him up.
Right.
and take
Danny
him.
was good like that. Danny would come pick him up.
Right. So,
Right.
He, you know, he was able, but it wasn't as it was.
Right.
Right. So this is an interesting group of people: Joel Lewis, Danny Schott, and your father.
Right.
They all had full-time jobs,
Right.
and were doing poetry as an avocation.
Yes,
and,
right.
but connected through the whole poetry.
Yeah. Well, Danny and Joel were, of course, the later. They're
Right.
young, obviously they're
Right.
younger, of course, but they were later on. More towards the time, I guess.
Right.
No,
90s.
actually, my mother was alive when he knew Joel.
And also,
yeah, I'm not
was
sure
it
about
Danny also? I don't know. I just remember Dad asking me to take Joel to his home in the middle of Shiva.
Oh.
So I remember Joel being on the scene.
I know. No, my mom
I'm
went,
trying to think-
mom
I'm
went
trying to
with
think.
him to Joel's parents' house
Oh, okay.
in North Bergen, New Jersey.
Okay.
So I know she
She knew Joel.
Joel was around then.
Right.
He did this New Jersey poet book. It's I'm sure it's in the Salt.
Yeah, the Outlaw Bible.
No,
Oh,
the Salt.
oh, the Salt,
Blue Stones.
Stones and Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that was Joel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was. There were a few other people too that he was connected with. New Jersey poets as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think. I don't know about other poets, things that he didn't want to write about. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he always seemed to be very good at meeting, you know, people who interested him. Like, you know, have that Sonny Rollins letter, and you know,
I
and
love
the
that
other-
world of.
Yeah. I mean, anything as long as it's artistic, he loved it. You know, especially with the kids. If the kids did something artistic, he was thrilled. Nothing made him happier.
Yeah, that's true.
You know.
He liked that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for. We're working on the archive, and
Have a lot to work on.
yeah, but it's it'll come together. And
What do you do? What
Are you
do
digitizing it all, or
what do you do with all of the material?
Bob can speak to that, but we're basically organizing. I mean, I know you
we
went
did our
through
best.
things. Yeah, like Bob can talk
We're
about
basically in the processing stage, which essentially means weeding and sorting at this
Right.
point. Even though you were very helpful and
I did my best. I'd never archived
well,
anything
no,
before,
that
but,
was helpful. But then there's another step.
Yes. Well, I the one thing I do know is that there's a lot of copies of a lot of the same thing.
Yes.
And I didn't know, I got to a point where I didn't know what was original and which was a copy, so I just left it.
Right, he loves copying.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But in general, you gave us a lot of material.
Oh, yes.
And it's going to take a
long time.
a while to go through all
Yeah,
of
there
that.
was a lot of
I mean, there's his written stuff and also a lot of the books that people inscribed to him. You know, there was several boxes of that.
Yeah.
So, and
Kept
from that you
everything.
could see the different people that he met, which is probably another interesting avenue.
Which actually just opens up one more question. Of all the material that he kept and he read and he corresponded with other people, who are his favorites? Who are his favorite authors?
His favorite authors?
I mean, in terms of these people that I'd say Ted Ensslin
was number one.
number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
also Allen.
Yeah, Allen Ginsberg for sure too. But Ted Ensslin was, there was something.
Heads and shoulders.
Yeah.
They just connected on a certain level.
Right.
And I mean, I still remember that time when Ted came to visit when I was little.
Yeah, he came later on too.
Yes.
He had a wife that was exactly my age.
Okay.
And, so it was interesting.
Yeah.
And, I think she's still up in Maine.
She is. But their son passed away.
Yeah. But and he had a whole other life before her,
Right.
of course, as you know.
Right.
But
He liked to talk about Ted because Ted, he had, educationally, he went to the Sorbonne, I think it was, and he was some kind of a scholar.
Right.
Really a brilliant guy, and not only that, he wrote music.
yeah,
And that and didn't he introduce him to Mahler or something?
yeah. His
Right.
father was also some kind. I forget what he was. Some
Right. Yeah.
not professor. I'm not sure, but
So Ted Ensslin, I think he studied with Nadia Boulanger.
Right, that's it. Yeah.
In Paris. Yeah. So he was a very accomplished
yeah.
musician, and his poetry reflects some of that.
Lyricism.
Yeah.
But and he had a whole other life as I believe he was had some kind of scientific background as well, but I'm not sure about that.
I don't know.
Sure.
In any case, so yeah.
But yeah, he was certainly very special. They had
They have a very
sort of
special relationship. I mean, you'd see the letter come every week. It'd be
He had Ted come and he did. As I said, I was a
that's
teacher,
right,
so
that's
he
right.
did a whole workshop in program in the Bayonne school system
Yeah.
for the gifted children. And so it was, it was very. He brought different things. Father brought these people together.
and he liked to do that.
Yeah,
That was really something he really enjoyed
Yeah.
doing.
So
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
well,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank
It's great
you.
talking to
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll talk again sometime.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.